welcome to Soul Symbols. My name is Shelley. I'm a writer, an astrologer, and a card reader, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel. Happy Tuesday. It is How to Tarot Tuesday, and what that is every week I focus on one card from the 78 card tarot. For the beginning of the video, we go over the symbolism of that card and talk about all of the meanings. And then after we've talked about the meanings, you, the viewer, get to choose from one of 3 tarot decks, and I will go ahead and do a spread to show how that card manifests in your life. All of the names of the authors of the decks that I use are in the description box below, and if you ever want to jump straight to your reading, the timestamps are also listed in the description box. Now today's reading, I am going to go ahead and clarify using some oracle. I'm going to be using the Intuit Oracle by Kimberley Fisher, and let's go ahead and get started. I can't believe we are at number 10. It's amazing how quickly time goes. We started the Suits of Wands what felt like not too long ago, and now here we are at the culmination. We're at the very last of the numeric of the Wands suit, and what that is the Ten of Wands. And in the Ten of Wands, you see a man who is dressed kind of like a page. He has a tunic, and you don't even see his face because he is holding with all of his might 10 rods, right? 10 wands. He has boots on, and he is walking steadily towards what looks like a village in the distance. And he looks like he is really putting all of his effort, all of his force and labor into carrying this heavy load. You see his arms are bent, his shoulders are over, and it just looks like it's just a very heavy burden to bear, and he has a lot further that he needs to go. So the Ten of Wands is most definitely a card of exertion. It is a card about taking on too much or having a lot to bear. And it's basically, what I always think is interesting about the Ten of Rods is that, you know, when you think of wands, just like the Ace of Wands, aces are energy and their spirituality and their force, right? And you know, every card that we've talked about from 1 through 9 have really had this kind of energy about it. It's had this, you know, this momentum behind it. And here you see someone who's kind of pushing against these rods as if they're a wall, right? The way they're fanned out, the way he's holding on to all of them, and the way that he's trying not to drop any of the rods, right? So definitely, the first and most prominent definition is taking on too much. You know, it's about shouldering things that are more than what you had bargained for. So a lot of times the Ten of Rods does mean that. It means that maybe you got in a little bit over your head. Maybe an agreement, you know, turned out to be more than you had initially anticipated. And again, each one of the 10 rods are, you know, require energy, right? They require energy. They're like an idea or a task or something that you have to do. Now, the other side of that is that, you know, it can be also that maybe you're taking on too much, like when you refuse to say no. You know, maybe you're, you know, running your nonprofit organization, and then you're working late at work, and then you agree to do something for your child, and before you know it, you have too many things, too many irons in the fire, and you're taking on more than what's yours. Another way that it's representative is maybe you're taking on tasks that really aren't supposed to be yours. Like maybe something's going on at work, or maybe something's going on at home where, you know, more and more, you know, certain responsibilities are supposed to go to other people, and then all of a sudden they're pushed back on you, or for whatever reason they get, you know, you pick them up. So a lot of times it does mean, you know, taking on the lion's share of the work, and, you know, stuff that you really probably could delegate. The other thing about the Ten of Wands is kind of refusing to delegate, and when we get into the reversal, we'll kind of touch on that a little bit more. But a lot of times it will talk about how, you're really on the brink. You see this person kind of pushing, like, right? It's like pushing a wheelbarrow uphill. This person looks like they're pretty worn out. But they're pushing to get all of this done. So again, it can be, you taking on more than your fair share of the work. Another meaning is that you could be, taking all the blame for something. If you see this card around air cards, maybe someone's trying to make you a scapegoat or trying to make you look like you're, this load was yours to carry alone. The other thing is sometimes it can be just an indicator that maybe you have a project or something coming up that's going to require a lot of work. Maybe it's, we do a weekly energy card reading here on my channel. Sometimes if I see this, it would be kind of an indicator that you're going to have a kind of a heavier workload, for the week. You're going to be maybe working some overtime or taking on a lot more, working really hard to try to get everything done. When the Ten of Wands shows up, I definitely see it as one of those weeks where the inbox will not be clean by the, how when you get to the Friday and you think, okay, the calendar will be clean, the inbox will be, taken care of, or at least in queue to be handled. A lot of times the Ten of Wands does mean that there's work that's probably going to carry over and probably keep you a little bit bogged down. Now, the other thing that it can mean is that it can mean that, you're taking on tasks that only you can handle, meaning that, maybe there's, somebody called out sick, or, there's some kind of role that you alone you need to shoulder, right? Either that, or it could mean that maybe you're a little short-staffed or something's going on where you feel like you're carrying all these burdens by yourself. Now, the other thing is that it is kind of, again, with the push uphill, it can be a task that you really feel like you're fighting tooth and nail. If you see this card next to something like justice, it could be something that you're being blocked. Maybe there's changes or there's work that you need to get done, but you're running into delays. Maybe you need paperwork, or if you saw this next to the Eight of Wands in reverse, it would probably mean that there are delays, like you need certain paperwork in order to complete the task and it's not happening, so it's putting you behind and it's making you work harder. Now, the other thing that you seem, so similar to resistance, it can also mean that you're pushing against the current, right? Everybody has always felt that kind of reinventing the wheel. You've heard the cliche saying, work smarter, not harder. So a lot of times it could mean that you're up against a task that, you're getting bogged down, or you're falling behind because things are becoming more convoluted than they need to be, and you can't keep up, or you can't keep ahead. Now, the other thing is that it can mean that you have to work really hard for every gain. This would be a symbol. If you saw this next to the Wheel of Fortune, that would be a sign that, or next to the Six of Wands. It would mean that every victory is going to be hard earned. You can do it, but it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of overtime, and you probably will experience. I always think of it as that, you always see those memes that talk about when you come back from the grocery store and you have like 7 bags and you refuse to do 2 trips, and you decide, you're like, okay, 2 trips is for wimps. I'm going to go ahead and grab all these bags. And you know how you get halfway through or halfway to your house and you were just like panting and like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. That's kind of the image that I think of. And I'm going to go ahead and jump to the third deck, which is the Vice Versa Tarot. And I definitely see it in this person's face. Here you get to see the front of the person's face. And you know what I think is interesting, I've still been analyzing this. Please tell me if you see something in this image that I'm not seeing, but there's like a statue that looks like it's very worn and, you know, weary. And doesn't it look like it's the same image as the man, except it looks like weathered with time? I think that's such a poignant symbolism, and I've always, every single time I pull this card, I try to read it. And, you know, please tell me what you think of that, because it looks like a statue that looks like, the only interpretation I can get is that it's been, you know, worn down over time. Like you've been doing this a long time is the kind of symbolism. The other thing that you see is that in this rendition, the sky is fading. It looks like he's been working all day. You know, it's dusk, it's twilight, and he's still working, and he's carrying this really heavy load. And when you look at the back of the card, which is the reversed imagery, he's still, just like the writer Waite, he's got a village in the distance, right? He's got a village in the distance, but he's still, you know, got a ways to go still. But in that definition, it's about, you know, it's about really laboring hard and things not coming easily and having miles to go before you can rest. Now, in the same vein of work, which I do see it usually means a lot of work, it can mean the labor that you do when you're starting up a company, or, you know, when you're starting an endeavor, or when you're in the thick of it, like when you really are close to victory, but you have to endure a little bit longer. The other thing, or again, as we mentioned in the beginning, tens are culminations. They are the conclusion. The next card that we're going to see is going to be the court, which starts with the page. And so you're no longer through the 1 through 10. We're going to go into people after this, right? So really the 10 is the end of the cycle, and it's like saying, okay, you know, the other thing that I kind of get from this, and just because wands are fire, and, you know, to put the astrologer hat on for a minute, a lot of fire signs are very kind of impulsive. They get excited about an idea when it's new and fresh. So if you care to look at my playlist, the How to Tarot for the Ace of Wands really plays into the 10 a lot too, because it's almost like, you know, it's almost like you had that grand idea that you wanted to do, but you had it 10 times, right? And as a writer, I can definitely relate to this. Have you ever, and it doesn't have to be writing, it can be any endeavor. Maybe you like to start projects and not finish them, which is a very fire thing, right? You get all excited about one idea, and before you know it, you got 9 other ideas behind it, and you're doing 20 million things at once. It is definitely kind of an octopus kind of feeling, like you have 8 legs and different things. So a lot of times it can mean that, again, you're committing to too much at a time, and it's starting to overwhelm you. Now, this really plays, being overwhelmed really plays into the middle deck. I went with the Anna K Tarot. And what you see is you see dark clouds in the background, and you see what looks like a stone wall, like a fort, right? And the 10 of Rods are like all strewn about, and they almost look like a cage, right? And this person is cowering in the corner, right? And so in that, you know, in that definition of taking on too much, or having 10 ideas, or not being able to say no, a lot of times it can mean that you're putting yourself in a situation where you're really going to burn out. It's too much for you to bear alone, and it's going to overwhelm you. Now, this could be a job situation. It could be, you know, obligations that you agree to. The other thing is that I do see this card a lot with creative pursuits, because just like we said, you know, as a writer, I'll be like, oh, let me write this manuscript, and then let me write this one, and then you get another idea, and before you know it, you have too much, right? And you are going to be that man cowering in the corner, like, oh my God, you know, I can't deal. I need a day off. I can't even deal. And this is definitely the card of the person who has not had a day off in too long, right? But in that definition of taking on too much, I had a really great mentor, and actually at the tarot retreat, she mentioned this. If you've ever looked at your schedule, both you know, work-related things, family-related things, and pleasure, and also recreational, your hobbies. Your hobbies are a big one, right? A lot of times we think, oh, they're my hobby. I don't have to worry about that. But what she said, and this is such a great, and actually this was at an environmental course. I'm sorry, it wasn't at my tarot retreat. It was at my environmental course. But what she talked about is how if you do a checklist, like if just on a piece of paper, write down all of the activities that you do in a day. You could even break it up. If it's work, write down just a few keywords of the tasks that you do. Maybe you check a certain report. Maybe you do emails for something. Maybe you double check. Do like a bullet point list of all the things you do in a day. And then with a marker or a colored pencil or whatever, take out 3 colored pencils. Take out red, yellow, and green, like a stoplight, right? Red, yellow, green. Now, next to any activity that you really look forward to doing, like the ones you get excited about, go ahead and put a little green dot. Anything that you're kind of like in the middle, kind of like, you can do it, you don't mind doing it, you get it knocked out, but it's not like, it doesn't make your heart sing, but you can knock it out, put a yellow dot. And then any activity that you absolutely dread, like when the thought of it pops in your head, you're like, oh God, I have to go do that. I really don't want to go do that right now. I just don't want to do it. You just know, stop light. Go ahead and put a red dot. And when you start seeing the Ten of Wands coming up in your reads, like for yourself, or if you see it on a channel, and again, this is all energy. We just read energy here. It's for entertainment purposes only. But anytime you start seeing that 10 pop up a lot, it's kind of like a Danger Will Robinson. I think of that little robot from, Lost in Space. Danger Will Robinson. Like you're gonna start. Steam is gonna start coming out of your ears. Either that, or you're gonna be cowering in the corner because you're all of these things that you have to do are your rods that are making a cage. So I would say that if you are starting to get in the Ten of Wands energy in that bad, that kind of negative way, go ahead and do your little checklist and try to eliminate as much as you can. I mean, if it's work related, unfortunately, it is what it is. But you can sometimes maybe even negotiate it. Maybe because the other thing about 10 is it's good to delegate. Delegate. If one of those rods you don't have to carry, but someone else can help you, maybe someone who actually likes doing that task, look for that. Look for that as an out. But try to eliminate as many of those red activities as you can. And then try to cut the yellow activities in half. Now, of course, I think of that song, I don't want to work, I just want to bang on the drums all day. We can't do that, right? You still have to do our job. But try to eliminate the tasks that you absolutely dread doing, and that will really help mitigate some of the Ten of Wands energy, because it does make you want to cower in the corner. And that, in that same vein, it does make you feel like you just never have time to relax, right? And I am a big advocate of a do-nothing day, right? You need that. If you do not have an entire day where you have absolutely no agenda, like nothing planned, nothing you have to do, and let me just tell you, and I love this channel. This channel is my lifeblood. I totally enjoy doing it. But what happens is that I do also work a 9-to-5 job, and I have definitely had weeks where I'm like, I need a vacation, and you need to really prioritize those breaks, because the things that you love to do, when they start getting overwhelming, but to have that do nothing day, and that's absolutely really nice, because the Ten of Wands is about feeling like you have no time to relax, right? Like it doesn't matter if you put one of those rods down, right? Because you'd still have 9 other ones, It's like, whoa. Even if you put 5 of those rods down, you still got, the 5 of rods is conflict. So, so the other thing that I kind of get with this is that a lot of times it seems like anytime you never turn off work, which I know is really hard nowadays because a lot of, persons are working virtually, and I'm a big advocate of having kind of a work-life separation, and that's difficult sometimes, but definitely utilize, I always think that if you never, and Americans are very guilty of this, even after you turn the laptop off, you're still getting emails through your phone, or you're still answering texts that are work-related, even though technically you are off the clock. Those kind of boundaries is what would cross over and manifest as a Ten of Wands, like really quick, like you're on your time, but you're not, that work separation hasn't, that boundary hasn't been made clear. Now, a lot of times it means that you can feel like you're on the treadmill, like you feel like you're the hamster on the wheel, the rat race, and then a lot of times you do feel like you're pushing yourself to the limit and you're just about to break, like really, like how much farther? I'm going to drop all these rods on the ground, right? You know? The other thing is that it can be tearing out a really unpleasant duty. Again, it might be one of those red dot kind of things that you continually do, and that's starting to burn you out. I do see this card as the burnout card, and it definitely, if you see it next to any other Danger Will Robinson cards, like maybe the Nine of Swords, or if you're starting to have anxiety and just really feeling like exhausted, and definitely if you saw this next to the Ten of Swords, then it would be like, okay, put a fork in me, I'm done, right? But it's definitely kind of pushing your boundaries. The other thing is that it can be cleaning up a messy situation. Like, for instance, something could have blown up, and all of a sudden you were just like, oh God, and you get left you get handed the bag, right? You get handed the pooper scooper is a lot of times. And the other thing that it means is that it's just a, it's an unholy mess that that's going to take time and effort. And sometimes if you see this next to the eight of wands, it can be, that it started quickly and landed on your plate hot and steaming, right? Now, it can be, and in that sense, it can also be a lot of pressure. If you have like a time constraint on it, it would be something that you have to knock out in a fast amount of time. Now, when to manifest as a person, I can definitely, of course, first off, it would be someone who is stressed out on the verge of burnout. It can be someone who's really overstimulated. Like you can tell someone's starting to really not be with it because they're just working too hard. The other thing is it can be someone who works more than one job. If you see this next to the Two of Pentacles, then that's someone who has a day shift and a second shift, and that can be being a mother too, by the way, because sometimes you work the day shift and then you come home and take care of children, and it's like just no time for yourself. Either that, or it can be working two or more jobs in order to sustain an income. One interesting kind of insight that I got as a person is that it can be someone who has a back problem. If you see this next to any type of health related card, in Lenormand, trees mean health. And in the about a week ago, I pulled out what we call the Gypsy Oracle. It's just basically an oracle deck, but it was really neat. It had several cards in it that talked about doctor and malady. So sometimes it can be someone who has a chronic back problem, maybe someone who's had a back injury, or someone who maybe threw out their back, which is something I did recently. So that can be it. The other thing that it can be is that it can be an extremely ambitious person, like someone who bites off more than they can chew. And the other thing that it can be is that in a social context, it can be like a labor union. It can be something like if you see this next to something that kind of represents maybe a legal battle or some kind of, if you saw this next to the Seven of Wands. Now, when we look at it in the reverse, the Ten of Wands in reverse really does have a really positive connotation. It usually means that, it either means that the energy is getting to an extreme or the energy is lifting. And I'll be honest, most tarot readers interpret it as the energy lifting. And of course, with the, I'll go to the vice versa tarot. In the front, you see how it's twilight and dark out, but in the background, you see light in the clouds, right? And you see him almost coming close to his destination, right? He's almost there, right? You just keep on going, keep on trucking. You're almost going to make it. And, oh, he does have boots on. I thought that poor man was barefoot for a minute. Nope, he has boots. It's hard to tell, but he has boots just like the Rider-Waite. But so again, it definitely means that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Just keep on going. It can mean that there's an end of the anxiety. It could mean that you're finally delegating, or someone, the cavalry. Like if you see this coming next to a card, that means that you're getting relief. That could be like the cavalry is here. I don't have to keep doing things by myself. The other thing is that it can be It can be kind of a misuse of talents. And I know that's kind of a weird interpretation for the reversal, but because remember, we can also say that it can be a negative man. I'll be honest, the first thing that I kind of think of is that have you ever had the type of person who wants to do everything their way or wants to keep their, almost like in a controlled way, they want to keep their hands on the task because they don't want to teach anybody else their job? It's almost like an insecurity thing. Like if you saw the Ten of Wands reversed next to maybe the Four of Pentacles or even the Devil, it's definitely somebody who likes the control of something, or even next to the Emperor. That would be a big one too. Because it definitely means that someone wants to continue, even though it's a lot for them to handle, and even though they could delegate, they refuse to lighten their load. Like they refuse to give anything to anyone. And maybe it could be an insecurity thing. They're afraid if they teach someone else how to do it, that maybe someone will steal their thunder or take away their livelihood. But most of the time, it definitely means that it can be that somebody is not doing something correctly and it's causing more damage. Like maybe someone has their hands in a lot of different things and it's having a long-term negative effect. Sorry. And then the other thing is that it can be. Sorry, that's dude. Oh gosh, hi dude. That's dude with no muffler. He likes to audio bomb my readings. Sorry. I haven't heard him in a while. But he actually audio bombed like a teleconference that I had not too long ago. I was so mad. I was just like, oh my god. Okay, sorry. I'm gonna shut up now. But a lot of times it can be like running out of steam, right? Like it can be that final break when you can't carry it anymore. I almost kind of think of those rods falling on the ground, like you just dropping them and collapsing in a heap, right? You just can't do it anymore. It can be, if you see this next to it, it can be as like a psychological breakdown. A lot of times that it can be self-imposed obligations, like things that you really shouldn't be taking on, but you are, and you refuse to put the rods down. The other thing is that it can, just like we said about not wanting to let go, it can be a little bit of a control freak thing where sometimes and I can understand, because sometimes what it is that sometimes it helps us feel in control by doing everything, right? It's almost like, okay, the way you avoid chaos is by doing everything, whether that be cleaning or taking care of someone. The other thing is, it's kind of that perception of, well, in order for it to be done right, I have to do it. And that is definitely the Ten of Wands in reverse. But the negative side of that is that it definitely becomes a little bit domineering. That would be another negative if you saw next to either the Devil or the Emperor. It would mean that you're really, you're taking on too much. The other thing is that it can manifest as a little bit of resentment. Like, well, I'm doing all this, no one else is doing anything, but you're not relinquishing any control either. So in those kind of situations, a lot of times it is good to look at the root of that. Like, why do I need this control? What is it? Because if it's keeping you in a loop of resenting those who are making you work, then what you really do want to do is, again, with the Wands card, you can put those wands down. There's nothing stopping you from putting the wands down. Now, the other thing is that it can be a little bit of cheating. Sometimes it can be a sign that, the 10 in reverse can be a sign that someone's getting away with something. They might be working a little harder. I kind of almost think of that as like, if you've ever seen those movies about how people, get money digitally from things, it's like how I almost think of it like a computer. When your computer works extra hard, it sounds like it's straining, even though it's not doing much. Sometimes it's a sign you have some kind of virus. That could be someone, especially if you see this next to like kind of a thief card, like maybe the Seven of Swords. Someone is working extra hard to try to keep things away from you, right? They're kind of keeping the payload, the pay dirt away from you. Now, the other last thing is that it can be a little bit of victimization, where you just feel like you're the whipping girl or the whipping boy. right? Where you feel like you're the one who has to take all the crap jobs, or you're the one who's given all the crap jobs, or you're the ones who's, given the task that nobody else wants to do, and you're constantly being given it, and you're ready to just, up and leave. If you see this next to like Eight of Cups, it would be a sign that you're really close to, if that's like a job or something like that, it's just becoming too much, and you're tired of being, the pooper scooper. Now, when it comes down, when it comes down to people, it definitely means that that person who is wary, who can't walk any further, or who carries more than they should. And that's definitely something to look for, because you don't want to see anybody struggle. And if you do, and again, sometimes you can see the 10 in reverse next to a court card or a patriarch, and that could just mean that maybe someone works really hard in your family, to take care of everyone, right? But they really do, need to lighten the load. But wow, guys, that is the 10 of Wands. You can see why I like it. It's definitely, something that it's a card that has a lot of different meanings. I'm sorry. But so without further ado, let's go ahead and see, how does the 10 of Wands manifest in your life? The first deck is always the Rider-Waite-Smith, and it's the AG production. It's a very clear rendition. And with it, we have a beautiful sunstone. It's kind of a brownish goldish stone. Doesn't do it justice. My second deck is the Anna Kay deck. And with it, I'm sorry, I got a creaky chair. And with it, we got a beautiful smoky quartz. And then the last deck, we got the Vice Versa Tarot. And again, this deck does not have a formal card back. All of the back is a second image that is read as the reverse of the card. And with it, I have my beautiful Dalmatian Jasper. So I'll go ahead and give you a minute to decide. Maybe you like the art or the stone or the timestamp or the number. But please choose from your intuition, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, we're back. So let's start with the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith. Love this. And let's see, how does the 10 of Wands manifest in your life? And again, we are going to pick an extra clarifier card from the Nuance Intuit Oracle by Kimberley Fisher. The names and descriptions of the names of the authors and the card decks are in the description box below. So let's go ahead and see, how does the 10 of Wands manifest in your life? Oh, wow, guys. Got some energy here. Let's clarify. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll get a clarifier. And this is really a wonderful deck. I use it all the time. We got Temperance trying to come out on top. I'll just give it a quick shuffle. I shuffled it a bit, but we'll just real quickly. It's excellent cardstock. Okay. And Rider-Waite-Smith, what's the theme? Okay, you got networking. Wow, okay. All right, so definitely, guys. So the 10 of Wands, the way that it manifests in your life is, in the past we got death. And again, we How to Tarot on Death. If you want to watch it, it's in my playlist. But it's a major arcana, and actually the center cards are all majors. So the 10 of Wands is definitely, I always say, and actually in the center you got two majors kind of sandwiching this 5 of Swords here. So I've always said the way the majors work is that it isn't, major arcana is like a major life event, but when it shows up in a spread, like especially for like a weekly spread or something like this, it isn't that like some kind of life-altering meteor is going to come out of the sky and hit you in the head, right? What it means is that it just means that what you're experiencing right now is kind of a part of an overall theme that's been occurring for a while. So in the past, you definitely got the death card. Just means that you've had some kind of metamorphosis, and I do think that it stemmed from some kind of loss. Maybe in your younger years or something leading up to this time, leading up to your Ten of Wands, you really had some kind of, you went through a very, very deep and a powerful change. And that change really was kind of it was the end of a cycle and the beginning of something new. But what I see right now is that I'll be honest, I'm getting some kind of vibe that this might be something kind of legal. Either that or, due to something that has happened in the past. We've got underneath the Ten of Wands, you've got justice, right? And that's being judged for something, right? It's being judged for something. It could be something that's actually a legal case, The other thing is when it comes to death, I'll be honest, it can be the passing of someone that left some kind of inheritance where all of a sudden now you're in some kind of legal situation where you have to see how that benefits you. But here I am definitely seeing that when I see justice after death, it's almost like you had a lot of loss in your past and it made you a new person, and you almost feel like you're being judged now for how you were before. Even though you have changed, you feel like a new person. You're not the same person that you were before. But it's what makes me feel this way is because the Ten of Wands can be, again, it's carrying that heavy load. It's almost like carrying the sins of your past and being held accountable for them. I am getting a lot of accountability here. But the other thing here, though, is that underneath justice is you got the Five of Swords. So the Five of Swords is not a real pleasant card. You can see in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith, you see the clouds, and one person is clearly the victor, and he looks very smug that he won. And then there's two people walking away. One person is upset, the other person's just walking away, and they've left their swords for this person to claim. So basically, with the Five of Swords, you could either be the person who conquered all, or you could be the conquered. And here I am kind of getting the vibe I'm getting the vibe like, again, it's never a real pleasant card because there's winners and losers, right? And that's not, the five is an odd number. It's not an even number. And as you see with the irony is that, well, with justice is number 11, but the fool is 0. So technically justice is the 12th card of the deck. And 12 is equally balanced. It's 6 and 6, but the official number is 11, which is also parallel too, right? It's the mirrors. I'm sorry to get all spiritual on you, but I do think that there was some kind of loss in the past. You're really it's almost like you're carrying the burdens of that. It almost feels, the other thing is when I see justice, I think of the judge, right? And when the judge throws down a call, when the judge makes the verdict, you have to adhere to it. There's no getting away from it, right? You could try not to, the other thing is that it's a long time coming. So I do kind of feel like this loss from the past, this metamorphosis has taken place over time. And remember how we said with this many majors, you've got 4 majors. And I do feel like you kind of feel like you're the loser, like maybe judgment was thrown down against you, not in your favor, and it's making you having to work really hard. I'm almost getting the feeling like you almost have to make up in a short time for a long period of time of imbalance. I do get the sense, the other thing that I get is that sense of imbalance, right? You've got judgment balancing the scales, and then you've got someone who's a winner-loser. We got a winner-loser situation. But I do want you to take heart. I think right now you're feeling, I do think that you're getting, we said in the intro about how you can kind of make you feel like you're the whipping person, like you're the person who gets, beat up or has to do all of the work to make up for stuff. Definitely if you've ever watched those judge shows, if you watch Judge Judy, you see two people come with a claim, and when that call is made, when the judgment's made, if it's not in your favor, you can definitely feel like, well, I have to pay all this money back, or I have to fix up a house that I don't live in, or I have to build that fence that my neighbor wanted and I didn't. So you do feel, you feel like you're toiling under this verdict. I do get the sense that you feel like someone else has won over you. And the what also makes you feel so toiled by it is that you're coming out of loss, right? Like it's like you're very vulnerable, right? You're working hard. I just feel like you're in a bad place. But I do want you to take heart, because the root of this situation, maybe you are having to pay back something, or make something fair, make something right, and it does make you feel like the loser and like you're just toiling away. But the root of all this, and I just want you to know, this is an extremely positive card, is you've got the fortune. And we had a tarot on the Wheel of Fortune. Please check it out. But because I think that'll give you a sense of security in knowing, because the Wheel of Fortune is a very fortunate card. It's a card of fate. It's a card of saying, well, this needed to happen in order to turn things in your favor. The other thing is that the four corners of the wheel are the four signs, the four fixed signs. You got Aquarius, the water bearer. You got the eagle, which is Scorpio. You got Leo, the lion, and Taurus, the bull. And they're all reading books, which means wisdom. It means higher. It's almost like the Akashic records. It's like, okay, this was the agreement that you might have signed on for. You might not be aware of it. It's almost like in your unconscious, but it's kind of like things are turning by you going through this struggle, by you feeling like you got the crappy end of the stick and feeling like justice has been laid down on you. That or quite honestly, it could be that you're the winner too. It could be that maybe you had a lot of loss in the past and all of a sudden this judgment goes in your favor. But the fact that you're working so hard, I really do want to, I am kind of getting the sense like maybe this was, I don't think it was an unfair that's the only other thing though. I don't think it was an unfair verdict. It might have been something that you might have been really liable for, but it did make you just feel like, again, that moment. You can watch those judge shows, sometimes you feel for the other person, sometimes when you think you're going to win, you don't, and then, like we said, you have to work really hard for something that you didn't want. But please take heart and know, and if you get a chance to watch the How to Tarot on Wheel of Fortune, that is an extremely positive card. It means that by doing this, by doing the work, making everything level, by clearing your roster. And if this was something from the past, if it was something that you legitimately needed to clear, by clearing it, by doing the work, even though it's really hard, because the other thing is that village is in sight, right? You got the card that shows the village in sight. You might not be able to see it because you can't even look through the wands. You're so tired. But the other thing is it's really saying keep on going. Just keep going, and that wheel's going to turn, and your fortune's going to change in the right direction. And then moving forward, your future card is you got the Hanged Man. And this is a great card to get following the Ten of Rods, because we had a tarot on the Hanged Man too. The Hanged Man is the guy who's hanging from his foot, and he looks enlightened, right? And the short definition of the Hanged Man is that this man is in a crappy ass situation, but yet he can see the peace and the enlightenment from it, right? Right? And tell me that, and the yellows behind the judge, and the his head, this might not be comfortable. What you're going through is not comfortable, but it's necessary. And if you don't struggle, if you don't fight, if you just kind of look at it from a new angle, the other thing is he's kind of turning himself on his head, you know? The other thing that's great about the Hangman is that you see there's growth here. So he's been hanging there for a while. You might have been hanging here for a while, but you can see the higher purpose of it. Like you can see why it had to happen. But you are close to your village. You are working hard, but I think you're leveling the scales, and you have to level the scales, and there's going to be a few moments that you feel like the loser in the situation. But taking on that humility, that's the other thing, is that taking on that humility, you're going to turn the things, you're going to make everything balanced again. You're going to level the playing field, and it's going to propel you forward. But you are, the other thing that I kind of get is that after your work is done, I think you are going to take a pause, and I think you're really going to think about it before you endeavor to do anything new, because this is going to be so fresh in your mind. You're never going to forget how hard you worked, right? And what this situation put you through. Now, your clarifier card is you got Milky Way, and you got networking, marketing, social media, publicity, internet fame, exposure, and spotlight. So again, maybe this was something, maybe you do work in a public field and there was something, maybe you got judged publicly, or there was something that something that you did publicly that might have hindered you or cost you something. The other thing that I kind of see is that, I know this sounds like such an odd thing to say, but if you've ever watched some of those shows where you see people who've had a fall from grace, right? You see someone who was in a really high position, and then all of a sudden some kind of scandal really took them out at the knees, right? What they did is that, it's hard to recover from some things like that. I mean, there are definitely things like, you could look at any celebrity situation. There's been cheating scandals, there's been, fraudery schemes. Anybody who's ever been convicted of stuff like that, it's a difficult thing to shake, and it's something that you'll never forget, how publicly you were shamed. And I think moving forward, they talk about how the only way that you can really rebuild yourself after that is kind of seeing the higher purpose in it, but it's also kind of spinning it in a new way. There's definitely been people who have bounced back from things like that. There's people who've had really lows in their life, or had situations that really, broke them down, and then they rebuilt. And I think what it's saying is that the purpose, it's kind of saying that if you network, if you kind of spin this, I'm getting a media spin is what I'm hearing, you won't feel, you definitely will come out of this enlightened, right? And I am getting kind of a slow rebuild here. It's not real fast. But I do think that by networking and talking to others, or if it is a situation where, something happened that really was kind of damaging, I think by talking to people, either that, or maybe it did teach you something about fame or publicity. Maybe this was some kind of, tangle with the law. One situation that I always think of, and you tell me if this is like a dumb example, but there's a effervescent tab. It's almost like Alka-Seltzer that's just vitamins. It's basically an Alka-Seltzer vitamin, and it's called Airborne. And what it was is that they went through like a kind of a lawsuit because they put on their marketing, they said, oh, it prevents a cold. And then it kind of opened them up. It opened up a can of worms because they came back and, someone said, oh, it doesn't prevent a cold, da da da. And they ended up having a legal injunction about it. And then later they changed the marketing to say it helps, boost your immune system, right? You rephrase it. And I'm almost getting kind of that kind of vibe. Like maybe something that happened publicly really just kind of and blew up and became something that knocked you down. And then when you come out of it, you're not going to disappear. You can't disappear, right? but you can get back on the horse, and you can do it kind of slowly. And when you get back on the horse, you're going to be thinking about your words, or you're going to be thinking about why it went wrong and how to avoid that in the future. But wow, guys, see, that's a real power packed read. And let me go ahead and we'll put your card underneath. All right, so that's deck number 1. We'll go on and go to deck number 2. We got the Anna K. It was a really tough call. There's a few How to Tarots where I have a tough time deciding which deck I want to use. I was a little torn between the Vice Versa and the Slow Tarot, which also has a really beautiful rendition of the Ten of Wands. But I did ultimately decide on these 3. So I'm just going to do a very quick shuffle. I shuffle my cards pretty frequently, but I just like to do it one more time so you can know that they're nice and mixed up. So deck number 2, how does the Ten of Swords manifest in your life? Oh, this poor guy in his corner. Okay. Whew. Oh, God. Here, I'll go ahead and take all 3. Oh, wow, guys. Sorry. All right. And end. Okay, let's go ahead and get your clarifier. Wow, gosh, guys, I'm definitely seeing a theme here. All right. To start it off, I am getting a little bit of a relationship vibe here. I'm getting a relationship vibe, and yeah, and because we got a couple here. We've got the Queen of Swords and we got the King of Swords. And let me tell you, I do love this Queen. Sorry, the Queen of Swords is represented by Libra, and I'm a sun sign stellium Libra, so but I'm definitely seeing that, yeah, I'm almost getting a vibe of, let me just get a beat on this, because I'm trying to discern if this is you. If you just give me a minute. Yeah, to be honest, I think in the past, I am getting a vibe as if this were, I really do think that you got stung. You got stung real bad. And you can be a man or woman watching this reading, but what we have is we have the Emperor at the bottom here. If you can see this, you got the Emperor at the bottom. And this is the ruler of kings. This is someone who, it is his way or the highway, right? The other thing I want to note is that according to tarot, the Emperor is Aries, and the Queen of Swords is Libra, and the two are opposite on the scale, right? They're polar opposites, right? And the Queen can be seen as a little bit of an ice queen, right? She can be seen as, but what I am getting, and to be honest, is that I'm seeing a lot of boundaries. I'm seeing, to be honest, I don't know who did the stabbing. I'm assuming that it's the Queen of Swords, but both of these characters have swords, right? Like the Emperor is carrying a sword and she's carrying a sword, right? And in the middle, you have the Ten of Swords. You have someone who got up and walked away after being stabbed in the back 10 times. So I'm definitely seeing here, I'm seeing some kind of betrayal. I'm feeling like, something really ended painfully. Something ended painfully. And it's almost like you got up and you pulled all the swords out of your back and you kept on walking, right? I am getting the feeling as if maybe you're the queen. And I think you had a tussle with the emperor. And again, it can be roles reversed. You can be a woman coming through in the emperor energy or a man coming through as the queen. But I definitely get the sense, that you're in, because one thing that is coming through completely in all three here is boundaries. We talked about putting up boundaries, right? And the Queen of Swords is about boundaries, right? She's the queen of saying, I'm not going to take any BS. And I really get the feeling as if you might have gotten close to someone who's very controlling. It was someone who really wanted things their way and was used to having things their way. And I am getting a little bit of a kind of a warlord, with this card in particularly. This emperor, the emperor is never warm and cuddly anyway, but people come to him. He doesn't go to people, right? People do what he wants them to do, right? And I have this feeling, I really get this feeling as if, and the fact that this queen has all the snow around her, she gets made out like she's an ice queen, but I do love the expression on her face, because she's not, the Queen of Swords is not a cold-hearted person. She just doesn't put up with any BS. No BS. Like, you can be an emperor. That's fine. You be an emperor. But you're not going to come at me like that, right? And what I'm seeing is, the other thing is that I'm seeing the blue and the tunic here. I really have a feeling like, I have a feeling like these two, you went up against somebody who really wasn't budging. They were being really stubborn. They're being so stubborn. I'm sorry, if I'm off base with this, but I'm getting this, I won't budge. This is my throne. This is my courtroom. If you don't like it, da 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 da. That's kind of what I'm getting. And I think what happened was, I really get a sense that you probably hurt each other. And I don't think it was intentional, but, if the other thing about Aries and Libra energy is, and it's not bad. Aries are very pioneers. The Emperor is a good character. He's very strong, and he's the patriarch, right? He rules. But the thing about the Queen of Swords and Libra is, Aries is I am. Libra is we are. And if you do not come at her truthfully, or if you don't come at her in a sense of cooperation, and the Emperor wouldn't, the Emperor is like, okay, we're going to do things my way, then it is going to cause some pain. But here, I really do think that you were dealing with someone who was being very controlling, and I think you were trying to be cooperative, but it ended up really hurting you. I think it probably ended up hurting you both. The Emperor won't show it, because the Emperor doesn't. He's just going to be like, well, I was wrong, da-da-da-da-da. And the Queen won't show it either, but you can almost see it on her face, She is going to do what she's got to do, right? And the other thing is that she does it with a lot of grace. But I think that you did. I think there was, and the other thing is the Ten of Wands is an ending too, right? It's an ending. It's that's the last card, right? So I think that there was something that you went up against, some kind of emperor kind of character. It can be like patriarchal, like a father, but here I am just getting someone who's just very controlling, someone who wanted things their way, and it made it impossible. And what happened is, it caused a lot of pain, this controlling attitude, this stubbornness, this, unwillingness to cooperate. All it did was cause pain, and it caused it an ending. It kind of stabs something to, because we always say with the Ten of Swords, one sword would do it, right? Why do you need 10? Does it have to be that bloody? Seriously? Does it have to be that way? And the Queen, after going through something like that, she'd be like, you know what? Just keep your distance, stay. And you see, and in all of the court cards, any tarot deck that you use, most queens they hold their element. Like the Queen of Pentacles holds the pentacle, the Queen of Wands holds the rod. While the kings don't really have to, the queens are kind of like, look, I can use this if I have to. And, I'm just going to hold it up so you can see it. But it's very much about boundaries. Now, presently, you've got right underneath the Ten of Wands, you've got Judgment, and you got the King of Swords. And honestly, guys, you know what? If I had to call it, like, I'm really getting a feeling like this. I'm getting the feeling like this might be an ex situation. Just because I'm really getting kind of the same energy from the Emperor as I am getting from the King of Swords. They both have chessboards. You see how the checkers are at his feet? But this time, he's out of the throne. He's not sitting on his throne. He's standing up, and he's got a sword, right? And remember how I told you these two are partners? These two are parallels? They're a couple. He's wearing the same crown. He's wearing the same colors. And it's right under Judgment. And the Judgment card is coming out of the cave. It's seeing, in philosophy, there's a story that talks about coming out of the cave of shadows. It means coming out of your ignorance, right? Coming out of your ignorance. But the fact that it's underneath the rods, and remember how we said, we talked about it in the introduction. We said if you saw the Ten of Swords next to the Ten of Rods, it would really be like, put a fork in it, this is done. I think someone was being really dogmatic with you. They put you through some mess. They hurt you really damn bad. And I think you kept it classy. I think you pulled 10 swords out of your back, stood up, and said, you are never doing that to me again. If you want to come at me, you better come at me truthful, and you better stay 10 feet away. Not even 6 feet, 10 feet. And what I'm seeing is, I think this person, whomever you had the tussle with, has woken the hell up. Wakey wakey, eggs and bakey. They woke up and they said, wow, I think they see how classy you are. And I also think that they really do regret being a stubborn ass. I think they regret being a stubborn ass. But the problem is that I think they've awoken, but they feel like, oh my God, you see the storm clouds and you see the walls, and I think they're a little overwhelmed. And again, this is how the Ten of Wands is manifesting in your life. I think because the other thing is it coming after the 9, and how we talked last week about the 9 is really just being worn out, like, okay. And remember, this is, put a fork in it, 10 and 10, 10 and 10. And oh my God, in Judgment, gosh, guys, Judgment's 20. It's 10 and 10. Judgment is 20. And it's a major arcana. It's no BS. The Emperor is a major arcana. So I do think that I get the feeling like you feel like what you have been through has been enough forever. And I think, I can read this one of kind of two ways. And I'll throw it out there both ways just so you can get a clear understanding. This could either be you had a tussle with someone who was really hard, that was really controlling, you got hurt and you walked away, and then the next step is you went from being a queen to a king. And again, you can be man or woman in these energies. You went from being a nurturing kind of boundaries to a strategic boundary. And you really are, you're coming back to life is the other meaning of the Judgment. And remember, 10 and 10, you can't have any more pain from the source with both the wands and the swords. Now the other interpretation, and again, I'm getting a lot from this chessboard. I really think these two people are the same person. I think the other thing that we could interpret from this is that you got really hurt by this emperor. This emperor kind of pulled his head out of his butt, and the problem is that you've been through hell and back, right? It's like the other thing about judgment is resurrection, right? It's coming out of the dark, and that's an angel of light, right? And I think what it's telling you is that, so if you aren't the king, if the emperor, because it might be that the emperor has wised up and realized that he wants to be your king, he wants to be your match, and he's willing to stop being a jerk. But the problem is that it would have to be a very major rebirth for both of you, and it would be a lot of work. And at this point, after all you've been through, it's like, do I even want to? You know, do you even want to? Because it would be a lot of work. It would be a lot of work. It would be like coming back from the dead. It would be like, you know, resuscitating something that really, really got stabbed, that got stabbed 10 times, you know. But the person did stand up and walk away. That person was you. I'm sorry. But it is kind of that energy. I do think this is the same person. But to their credit, they're trying to be your match. They're trying to be equal to you. The other thing that I'm about to tell you too is that they are planning. They are planning. They are trying they're planning this. They're gonna, because he's strategic here, right? The emperor is very strategic, and he's toned it down a notch to be your equal. But all of those war games haven't gone away. He's still going to plan this out. The only other thing is that it's going to be a heck of a lot of work on both of your parts. And I think, honestly, it's probably going to be, I'm almost reading this more like the work is more on their side. The work is more on their side. Now, moving forward, the future of this, because this is what's happening right now. And this is, and definitely with all the swords, I'm getting this is in the mental stages right now. I don't even think that you know this is happening. I think the other person is going through this right now, and he's if anything, this other person might also be scared that you're coming, that they're going to get both barrels when they finally, you know, admit, you know, that they've had their head wedged. But because there was a lot of pain here and there was a lot of work. The other thing is, remember we said it's unnecessary work. It's you taking on the rods for stuff that you really shouldn't be picking up, you know? Maybe you threw those rods back at that person and been like, here, have fun. There you go, you know? You know, don't call me, you know? But as we move forward, and I'm sorry, I am getting a lot of energy from this. But I don't like the Ten of Swords. Ten of Swords is some stuff. But moving forward, you got the Page of Swords. You got the Page of Swords. And this is interesting. It's more of the blue and burgundy, which I think is such a neat color combination. But you see that he looks like he's training to tackle a soldier, right? He looks like and this is a wooden sword, right? And look how intent he is. Look at the expression on his face. He's ready to go. Ready to go. So again, I think first off, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think this person you're dealing with, they are probably cyber stalking you a little bit. Whatever information they can glean from your social media, if you're on Insta, if you're on Snapchat, if you got a TikTok, whatever you got out there, they're watching it. And I also, but more importantly, what I'm getting from that whole scene is that they really are trying to, you see how it almost looks like the hay version of you. I'm sorry not to giggle, but how cute. And it's not that, I don't think this person's trying to hack apart, you know, this isn't the Knight of Swords. If it was the Knight of Swords, I think that he would really, you know, be riding in to give you a verbal, you know, tongue lashing. But here I'm getting more of a, like, again, it's like a plan of attack in a very innocent way. I think it's like, okay, how can I contact this person to get the ball rolling? is what it is. And one other thing I'm noticing is you see how there's one rod, right? And there it looks like a rod in the middle of the, and it's almost like the first of the 10 rods. It's almost like, okay, how can I get started on all this work I have ahead of me? How can I get started on all this work ahead of me? Is the feeling that I'm getting. But you know what it is I am definitely getting, I'm getting a strong digital communication, because that's the other thing, is that the Page of Swords is not only the person who watches social media, but it's usually the small little beginning of something. It's very juvenile, and not in an immature way, but it's that start of something. It's not a full on in person face to face communication, because I don't think that's going to happen, you know. But I do think that it would be like the beginning. It would be kind of getting the ball rolling, where they can start tackling this work, or start, you know the other thing is that it can be like a verbal, it's not the Page of Cups, which might actually be a heartfelt apology. But to be quite honest, I'm not seeing any cups in this. And with the Emperor, you're not there's a level of pride here. There's a level of pride where it's going to be more of a, let me chat at you to kind of. Have you ever heard the expression "take your temperature"? It's a dating thing where, someone who might have acted the fool, they come back around, and then they're like, "Hey, and they'll make it a little bit more than just a hey. They'll kind of, but it is a little bit to see how responsive you are, and it's waiting to see, okay, are you gonna throw all the rods at me? Are you going to swing your sword at me if I try to chat you? Right? Would you reject me? Is kind of the feeling. But in this person's defense, this is some mess. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That's some mess. You don't have to deal with any mess, especially if you're the person who personally pulled those swords out of your own back. But this person, or this is trying to be your counterpart. And if they are legitimately, the other thing is that there's a phrase that everyone keeps using about being awoken or woke, being mentally responsible, mentally aware. This person might have woken up a little bit. They did. And the other thing is it's a little bit of a demotion too. They're coming down a peg. They're getting off their throne. The other thing is that the King of Swords is very cerebral. He is in his head. He's not a real touchy-feely guy. And if we still have that Emperor energy, but they are feeling like almost as if this is more of a task. Now, if you are a man watching this reading, it could be a falling out that you had with a woman, and you're trying to go back and get your Queen of Swords. You're trying to win your Queen of Swords back. She's not a mean woman. She won't verbally slay you. She's not in the reverse. I don't think she would be bitter. But the clarifying card that you got is you got house. You got home, belonging, roots, comfort, safety, family, traditions, buildings. And what I think is great is boundaries, right? If there are cards that represent boundaries in the tarot, it is these three, right? Queen of Swords is all about boundaries. 10 of Wands is like you needing to put up boundaries. But the other thing that I'm kind of getting is the fact that these are two of a pair, is that maybe you feel a comfort. You feel like this person is your home, or your place, or your legitimate counterpart. The other thing is that maybe you had safety with this person in the past, and now you don't, and you're missing that. Or the other person is missing that with you. The other thing is that it did kind of come out right under the page, so I also think that this person might be playing it safe. Again, they're trying to be strategic. They don't want to lose or be rejected. And definitely with the past Emperor energy, I would be very careful with that. Try not to, I'm not seeing any 5 of Swords, but the 10 of Swords is tough enough. But that's amazing, Judgment being 10 and 10. It would be a lot of work. The other thing is it would be a lot of responsibility and judgment being right underneath. It would be responsibility that needs to be carried out. But there is a potential. Judgment is coming back to life. It's rebirth, and it's a calling. And the home and roots and comfort is actually a really, really wonderful card. It's a very good card. But there does have to be boundaries in this. There cannot be, the other thing is that, tens are inequality. One person is doing way too much, and the other person is just kind of, scratching the surface. And that's, you want it to be fair. It has to be equal and truthful. And nothing says truth more than swords, right? All right, guys, I hope that made sense. But that's deck 2. That is how the Ten of Wands is manifesting in your life. Oh my gosh. And please, please be kind to yourself too. If you feel like, the other thing is if you feel like you're dealing with a lot of backlash from something, please be kind to yourself. That seemed like a lot. So deck number 3, the Vice Versa Tarot. Let's go ahead and see. Focus, please. How does the Ten of Wands manifest in your life? And I'm going to very quickly shuffle. Did it with all the other decks. So. It's starting to rain a little bit here. I don't know if you can hear that. It'll be very nice to sleep to. Sound of rain. Sorry. Okay. Let's go ahead and see Ten of Wands. How does the Ten of Wands manifest in your life? Two of Pentacles kept wanting to pop out. Let's see if it's meant to come out in the read. Kind of flipped. We'll keep going. I'm noting the cards. Currently. Ooh. Oh my God. All right. We're going to go ahead and take it just like this. These are the same 2 cards that we're going to do it. But this did come out in an angle. And then, okay. Page of Cups is trying to pop. Future, please. Okay, we had a whole bunch kind of flip over. Let me try one more time and we'll keep going. It's unfortunately too many cards. Okay, future, please. Four of Cups also tried to flip a little bit. Okay, Lovers in reverse and Strength. Alright, and let's go ahead and see what's your clarifier. Alright, I did see several cards coming out that talked about like analyzing things for more detail and like book, but we'll go ahead and we'll get started. So in the past we have the Four of Swords, and this is actually a really gorgeous rendition. You see a man who's older and kind of sitting in a chair, right? And the Four of Swords, he's resting, right? Now the reversal of this card is really, really amazing. And in the background you see, fires, almost like, things going on, and he's He's just slumbering, he's sleeping, he's resting, right? And the Four of Swords look like they're hovering. And the Four of Swords is that it's that kind of rest. I always think of it like a boxer. You know, if you've ever seen in the middle of a fight when they're really exhausted and they go to their corners for like 10 seconds and then they get this squirt bottle of water and, you know, towel. It's like the Four of Swords is that. It is your reprieve, right? There's something that's going on. You're in the middle of something, and right now is a time to rest. It's a time to rest. And maybe it has to do with world events. You know, we're all social isolating. Maybe it's just something that's on pause right now, where you have a moment to kind of recoup. But there are definitely things on fire, right? But right now you have to utilize this time. It's like a breather. Your problems are not going away, but they will be there when you return, right? So in the past, in the recent past, I really get this feeling as if you had some type of opportunity. There was some kind of reprieve that you got, but it was a mental reprieve. It's almost like you needed to take a time out, but it's like that boxer taking the 10 seconds to kind of regroup. It's not very long, but it's almost necessary. It's kind of like that time right before you go in to do battle again. You know, you try not to worry about it. You try not to think about what you're going to say or what you're going to do, because the rest is really important, right? It's important that you breathe and regroup and recoup. But where you are currently, and again, you know, where you're carrying the load, you know, you're carrying a lot, is, wow, you got the King of Wands, and again, you can be a woman and in the King's energy, and you got the Nine of Wands. And this guy was there last week. We just had a tarot on the Nine of Wands last week. So what it is that you got the 9, the King, and the 10. And these are all wands. I think that you are coming, and again, the Queen of Pentacles flew out, and it flew out at an angle. It flew out like a block. And the one thing I want to note about the 9 in reverse is that this is a wary card. This is a paranoia card. It's the card, well, sometimes it's justified. Basically, the 9 is like saying, you have been through the war, right? You're summoning the last of your reserves. And again, you know, the King and the 9 is like, you know, I'm going to stick it out to the bloody end. Like, you're not going to give up. You're not going to give up. And you're going to continue carrying that load. I think that you are definitely, I'm not seeing necessarily a battle, but I do think that you are wary of someone in your life, a Queen of Pentacles. And the Queen of Pentacles is normally a very nurturing card. She's not coming out in the reverse, but she is a woman it's a woman who knows her values, but it can be a woman who has some kind of investment in you. And I know that sounds strange. So it can be a boss. It can be someone who has maybe some kind of investment in your company or something that is of value to you. And what it is that it looks like in the past you might have, like, you had to take a mental break. And it's these two people dealing with each other, right? King of Wands and the Queen of Pentacles. So it could very well be you, and you might be a fire sign. Doesn't have to be sun. It could be somewhere else in your chart. Either that, or you're just exuding. The King of Wands is a real action guy. I always say he's a warm and generous king, but he's a king. He's not a knight or a page. This isn't his first rodeo, right? He knows how to take action, and the cool thing about the king is that he knows how to take action where it is swift, gets the job done, and then he goes back and sits on his throne, taps that wand, and like, all right, where's my leg of lamb? You know, he almost enjoys the The one other thing that I'm kind of getting from this is that I do think that this, whatever is happening, it's been ongoing, because the very fact that you had kind of a mental break from it in the past kind of means that this is almost like a timeline. But the other thing is that you are a little bit wary. You've been holding strong. You've been holding true to your energy, but there is definitely. It's almost like you don't. It's almost like you've been around. You've been around the rodeo. You've been through this rodeo with this Queen of Pentacles already a few times, and you're getting worn out. You're getting towards the end, and it could very well be a relationship. This could be a relationship that's close to ending. Either that, or it can be someone that you have some kind of commitment to, where they're financially invested with you. And it's almost like you want to take a different action or a different approach, and but you have to adhere to what their wants are too. And it kind of puts you through the ringer. It makes you tired. It makes you feel like, okay, it almost makes you feel like you have to. The other thing is about the nines, it makes you feel like, because you're the King of Wands, I get this feeling as if almost like you're putting on the other card that wanted to come up was Mask. I think I think you are strong. You are strong, because honestly, the 9 and the 10, you wouldn't be carrying those rods if you couldn't handle it, right? And the 9 is like never say die, right? We did just How to Tarot last week. The 9 is like never say die. Like, I will not give up this fight. But it is kind of indicating that you are taking on more than the lion's share, because you see how much red is in this too. You're taking on more than the lion's share. You're carrying more of this load. But I do feel like you feel like this Queen of Pentacles is crossing you a little bit. Not necessarily in a bad way. Again, she's not in reverse, so I don't think that she's being, I don't think she's being money grubbing or anything like that. But I do think that it's becoming annoying, and it's just making you feel like you have to work so much harder. The other thing is that I think you're keeping a really strong face, even though you really are. You're worn out. You're tired. You're carrying. You're doing. The other thing is, look how much action is in this. 9, King, 10. But one thing I will say is that the 10 is the last. It's 1 through 10, and the King is the culmination of the whole suit. So I do think that you're coming close to the end of this situation, but we do have a future here. And wow, yeah, we're about to get into that future. Let me go ahead and get into that future. In the future, we got the Five of Swords, and we talked about the Five of Swords in the other pile. The Five of Swords is not the nicest suit in the world. It's somebody who's very clearly won. There's someone who's very clearly lost, and the guy who's carrying the swords is the winner. And if you look at the reverse, there is a third person who's walking away, right? And the guy is like watching the guy walk away. Now, the one thing that I'm noticing a lot is that the person on the ground is wearing a lot of green, and the Queen of Pentacles is wearing a green sash. And green usually means money. But the King is also wearing a green sash as well, so it could be either one of you. But what's making me really feel like it's you is because I think that you're going to come out on top. I think you're going to be a winner. The reason being is because next to the Five of Swords, we've got the Six of Wands, which is that clear out victory card. And then you got the Hermit. But I don't think, the one thing that I'm getting from this, and I know the Five of Swords is not, that's why I went with clarifiers, because the Nine of Swords is not the nicest card. I do think that it is one of those situations, and we've all been there, where you might have gotten into some kind of commitment, or where you were indebted. It could be a relationship, could be a marriage, that you had to work harder before it was all done. It's almost like you did get put through, like you got put through the ringer a little bit, right? It's almost like when, and I hate to relate it to this, but that's the best analogy I can think of is like when you do get a divorce and then you have to sell the house and split the proceeds, or you have to go to court to decide who has custody of the children. And, it becomes where, you have to, pay for the mortgage and pay for the place that you're living. And you have to do all these things. And the fact that I'm seeing, it being a Queen of Pentacles, I do think that it is probably money related. Either that or it's relating to something that you value. And the reason that you're doing all this work is because you are maintaining that value. But you are the person who's doing all the work, and you're tired, right? It's annoying because, again, you're taking on a lot more responsibility to make sure that this gets taken care of. Now, you could be taking care of somebody, but again, with it being the 9 King and the 10, as we move forward, I see that you are going to get some vindication for that, because that's the other thing is with the 6 is that you're gonna be riding back. There's going to be a very clear winner and a very clear loser. And now looking at it, it could be the other person. It could be the other person wins and that you do not. But the feeling I'm getting is I am getting, because of all this red, with the red with you and then the red in the 6, there's a lot of red in the 6. I think that you are going to come out on top. I think all of this hard work is going to be vindicated. You're going to be like, damn, I've really, it's almost like I paid for that. But the moment it was done, the moment that, I almost take it, I also kind of take this combination really feels like that really god awful credit card that you had that's like 25% that you just feel like that you're paying through the nose for. And, you're paying it off, and they're like, thank you for your payment. And you're like, yeah, here, take your payment. But then when you finally pay that off, and it's just like you make that phone call like, close my card, and they're like, are you sure? Yes. And I'm sorry to compare it to kind of petty things like that, but it's kind of like that. It's kind of like I work my butt off, and then when it's finally done, you're just kind of like, okay, you are going to kind of stand up, put that sword on your shoulder, and be like, okay, and again, the 5 of Swords is not a pretty card. I don't like, I'm Libra, and I don't like real win-lose kind of scenarios. But you are going to feel like the victor. The other thing is that I really get the feeling that other people are going to be happy for you that you got out of that situation. I know that sounds crazy. I'm just getting that, because the other thing is that I'm really noticing everybody kind of like, hurrah, good for you, you made it, right? So maybe you did have other people around you that knew of your struggles, knew that you were going through something real tough. But the one thing that I do like about the spread, and that says a lot about your personality, the fact that you did rest before going into this, and the fact that you worked so hard. We do have the 5 of Swords, and we do have that, grandiose victory. But after it, you have the Hermit. So what that means is that after the victory, it's going to humble you. It's almost like once all this is done, once you've, it is almost like one of those hard-earned victories that when you finally get done, when you finally get to the village and put all the rods down, once you have that moment of vindication, you are going to pull into yourself, and you're going to look at the situation, and you're going to think about, it's going to change you, right? It's going to change you. You're going to look at the situation from a higher perspective and kind of reflect on it, and it's going to make you wiser. But I do think the other thing is that this is a real crowd kind of card, and this is a real isolated card. I think the moment that all this is said and done, once you finish with your hard work, you're gonna take a time out. Like, you're just gonna pull away from the world and just want to be inside your own mind for a while. Like with the credit card scenario, maybe you just say, okay, I'm just never gonna have. I refuse to have another credit card for a really long time, because you just never want to. You do kind of want to get back to yourself, and you kind of want to take the enlightenment. Actually, deck number 1 was very similar. They had a like an enlightenment card at the end of this too. So and that's such a good thing, because with the Hermit and the Star, it means the other thing is that it really does look like this man in the chair too. I do think that you're kind of an old soul. I don't think that, sometimes the king can be a little impulsive and he can be a little bit grandiose, but I'm not getting that energy from you. I think you enjoy, feeling the thrill of victory, but I don't think it's going to go to your head too much. I think you're going to pull back into yourself and really glean the lessons from what happened. And here we go. And I like this is that you got Lily, which is ambition, experience, development, achievement, achievement. It can mean sexuality, but here I'm definitely getting it more as a experience, because that's the other thing. Look at that, guys. You got experience and achievement right next to, the Six of Wands and the Hermit, which is all about achievement and experience. So I do think, again, I think all of this situation is really going to help you learn. And the other thing is you got bridge, you got communication, unite, connecting, overcoming barriers. So I do think that this barrier is going to be between you and this other person. The other thing that I'm really getting is that after this, because it is unfortunately going to be a win-lose. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible for it to be balanced. There are some situations in life that are just like that, right? There's some situations where it just turns out the way it turns out, and there's really no changing it. But I think after all is said and done, I don't think that you're going to want to stay in that, well, I won energy. I think you will try to communicate, and again, swords are communication. I think that you're going to try to bring harmony back to this. I think it might take a little bit of time. It might require that you kind of go away and kind of go into yourself a little bit. I do also think that you're going to be reflecting on that and discerning how to best compromise where the person doesn't feel so much like they, like, where no one feels like they got the short end of the stick. And that's very much that's a very warm way, and that is very King of Wands. It's it's kind, it's big-hearted. But well, guys, so that is how the Ten of Wands is manifesting in your life. Well, I always enjoy the How to Tarots. They do run a little bit longer, but of course, if you jump straight to your reading, it's not too bad. I thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed. Starting on Saturday, I always post a weekly energy card reading. It is just a general card reading to see what kind of energies we'll have for the next 7 days. So I hope you can stop back by then. And then if not, if you can join me next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about the Page of Wands. So I hope to see you then, and take it easy. Bye.